Hello. It's that time again, folks. It's Geeks Assembled, and we're gathered, Susan, Ethan, and myself, uh, discussing a 90s movie from 94, based on pulp comic from the 1930s, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a superhero movie of a different kind, starring Alec Baldwin as the main character, the Shadow. Um,
Bum.
bum. Set in the 1930s, as is the comics. Um, all about good versus evil, really. Um, Also, you've got a big bomb what's going to go off as well. So, who should we go to first for the opening thoughts? Who wants to put their hand up first?
Where do you
Go on.
can go?
Go
Oh,
on. Ethan. What's your opening thoughts on the Shadow?
I, I'm a massive fan of the original Shadow, which, as you said, was it started off as a radio show. Well, it was a radio show called Detective Stories
Yeah.
in the 1930 that was narrated by someone called the Shadow. And at one point, they were selling magazines of this radio show, but everybody kept going to the stall and saying, "Oh, can we get that Shadow magazine? Can we get that Shadow magazine? That Shadow guy?" And so eventually they thought, well, we're going to have to think of something. And they created a separate story called The Shadow, which was a radio show voiced by Orson Welles,
Mm-hmm.
who played the part in that, known as Lamont Cranston. And I think the best way to describe him is basically he is the original Batman. He's kind of Sherlock Holmes meets Batman, but it was a different kind of hero. He is essentially the first superhero ever created because he's a vigilante, he's a bit of a detective, but he's got powers, which was something not a lot of people had heard of at the time. And eventually they did a pulp comic, which was one of the most famous ones for pulp book series, where again, his name was Lamont Cranston, a playboy. The pulp books are brilliant. I've read them online. Trying to buy them is hard as ever, and they're super expensive. But I've read them online. The books are actually are amazing. They're amazing, and they're quite complex because there's actually more to him that you find out. You actually find out later on that Lamont in the books, Lamont Cranston isn't who you think he is. What happens is his followers, like his friends, like Margot Lane, the taxi driver, they find out that there's another Lamont Cranston who's the real Lamont Cranston. And this guy's like, oh, someone's using my name and stuff. And so they say to the Shadow, you said your name's Lamont Cranston. And eventually he reveals his real name is actually Kent Allard, who was a pilot in the First World War.
Oh.
Yeah, his real name is Kent Allard. And he said eventually he was a fighter, a pilot in the First World War, fought for France, until one day he disappeared. Everybody thought he was dead. He crashed. He falsified his death. He crashed in, I think it was Guatemala, somewhere like, yeah, Guatemala. And he was like this special little tribe that found him, and they sensed something in him. They said, "There's something in you. There's something trying to get out." And then they trained him up, and then that's when Kent went around the world, went to China, and he trained up to become the Shadow and fight against crime. And essentially, we got so many great villains in this, by the way, like the first super villains ever, like Shiwan Khan, who's his arch enemy, who in the books they weren't trained by the same guy, but they did go on similar paths.
Oh my God, they are so similar.
Yeah, so they are very similar. So they are essentially like, you know, Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes. But you've got great villains in this, from like Shiwan Khan, Benedict Stark, aka the Prince of Darkness, who's a horrible villain, evil villain. The Wasp, Black Falcon, the Hand organization, loads of different villains. Doctor, what's his name? Dr. Goalo, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Loads of different villains, fantastic villains. And eventually, after the pulp comics, because it went on throughout the 1930s, like I said, he was the first superhero ever made before Batman and Superman. After that, there wasn't anything much about him. Eventually, in the 70s, there was a short-run comic book series, which I think only went for about 12 issues. And then in the 80s, they actually did a modern-day comic of the Shadow. Same guy, but it was basically doing the Dark Knight Returns route, like Frank Miller, where he was still young. He had some kind of magic that kept him young, but everybody else was older, and it was meant to be more gritty and violent and brutal, and some of it is a bit weird, but the artwork's really good, and you get to see like an older Shiwan Khan, a final fight with Shiwan Khan in, at that time, modern day New York. And that went from 1986 to 1988, I think it was. And then they did another one. They went back to the roots of 1930s called The Shadow Strikes. Probably the best comic adaptation. If you ever get to read that one, The Shadow Strikes, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I'll try and send a link because the comics in that are phenomenal. Absolutely. And that was my first introduction to the Shadow, reading these comics. And then eventually in 1994, we got the movie The Shadow, which I fondly remember watching with my dad. Again, one of those movies you just remember back at the time. And I was like, oh, I want to see this. And you've got such a great cast in this. Alec Baldwin, Ian McKellen, John Lone, who's a phenomenal actor, John Lone, Tim Curry. And you've got tons of other, big name actors and stuff, from like Peter Boyle, Penelope Ann Miller. Even the little actors, Sab Shimono as Dr. Tam, Larry Hankin, who was a taxi driver, and Joseph Maha, who was the museum owner. Loads of actors in this. Oh, and I couldn't forget him, James Hong, who's at the start of the film. Lo Pan from Big Trouble in China. Where do I start with this movie? Just I think it's a beautiful film. Visually, it's at the time we were getting pulp movies, weren't we? We had The Phantom, Rocketeer, and The Shadow. Now, I suppose in a way, like I always felt like Rocketeer had the heart, Phantom was the action, but visually and style goes to The Shadow. What a beautiful world they created. And it made me, when I was rewatching this, it really made me miss comic book movies of that time, or how they used to be. Even from like these great shots of New York City, which are miniature shots, which you got many times in like Batman movies of that era. The Crow even did it. Loads of films did that miniature shot, but it's so effective. So, but yeah, in this, we don't get his real name, Kent Allen. It is just Lamont Cranston, who interestingly starts off as a villain. Starts off as a bad guy, which never happened in the comics, but it was a really interesting idea. To start him off as a bad guy, who eventually who's a opium drug lord, rules all of like China as the opium king sort of thing. Eventually gets kidnapped and taken by this special monk who trains him to be good and fight against evil, and he becomes probably one of the greatest superheroes ever, the Shadow. I swear to God, has got the best costume ever. One of the best hero costumes.
I was just going to say about the costume, Ethan. Are you going to get the coat?
Well, I've got a double-breasted coat, which is close enough, which is a cheaper version.
Well, all you need is a long black coat, a big red
black cloak. I would love. I mean, it's such I think it's
great
probably
hat.
Yeah, I would probably say it's probably the best superhero costume next to the. I love the Crow. The other costume I love is the Crow. Which is because all it is simple clothes. It's not like a suit that Batman wore or Superman or Spider-Man. The typical suits we know as superheroes. All it is a suit, a fancy suit, a double-breasted coat, a cloak, a red scarf, and a hat. and that's it.
And it's well, it does the job.
It does, yeah.
It's
And,
there to keep him in the shadows.
and
Yep.
it's faint. And this guy, the Shadow, has inspired, even his costume has inspired many other superheroes later on down the line. You know, we probably would never have got Batman. We probably would never have got the Punisher. And interesting one, Darkwing Duck, which is clearly based on the Shadow with the hat and everything. Even from the quote, you know, like, I am the terror that flaps in the night.
Yeah.
But who actually, funny enough, his real name is a spin on Kent Allard. Kent Allard, Drake Mallard.
Well, there you. He's just full of information here, ain't you?
Yeah,
But
it's fun.
so as we said, it's set in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Beautiful music from Jerry Goldsmith, like a really noir jazz, proper hero of that time music. And you've got like loads of people in it, like Penelope Ann Miller as Margot Lane, who was from the comics, Peter Boyle as I forget his name, who's a taxi driver, who's his mate. He's from the comics. Who else? Jonathan Winters, who plays his uncle. He's from the original books. And then you've got who, as many superheroes do, he's fighting normal criminals until one night, New York gets an unpleasant visitor in the form of Shiwan Khan, last descendant of Genghis Khan, played phenomenally by John Lone. Who's, again, I love this actor. He's only done a few movies actually, and he's only got a small handful of movies. He was the villain Ricky Tan in Rush Hour 2.
Yeah.
And one of my other favorite roles by John Lone was The Last Emperor.
Yeah.
The Last Emperor, which was probably one of the best roles he ever did, if not the best role. He was brilliant in The Last Emperor, but he's only done a small handful of stuff. He's one of those actors who disappeared a few years ago, or quite a long time ago now anyway. But he plays Shiwan Khan perfectly. Again, I'll probably go into stuff later, but yeah, Shiwan Khan is an absolute lunatic, but he's a great kind of lunatic. He's one of the best villains ever, which is like suave and cool, but an absolute psychopath. And he wants to follow on what his ancestor couldn't, which is conquer the whole world completely. And the Shadow has to stop him from creating a bomb which will destroy all of New York.
Cool.
So it's a fun movie, one I pleasantly happily watched again, which I've seen many times, but it's good to watch this movie again. I really enjoy it. I still enjoy it. There are like stuff I could go into later about like the production and certain things later down the line, but overall I do love this film. I love it.
I get the feeling that Ethan likes this movie.
What?
Right, we'll pop over to Susan then. Over to you.
Well, this movie was it was sort of another take on nuclear fission bomb creation that we're sort of hanging out with a little bit this springtime. Yeah, that Ian McKellen and Penelope Ann Miller were a father-daughter team that were creating this bomb. That was really interesting, and when I was a young kid, we used to listen to the radio shows that my dad had on cassette, and it was The Shadow Knows, and the Shadow was actually someone who not only was able to disappear into the darkness like a shadow, but it was pretty omniscient in many ways. Knew things about you because of his ability to read minds. There was a lot of that telepathy, a lot of the discussion around the shadow in the radio show was all about mental telepathy and mind control and reading minds and knowing things. I mean, just having an omniscient perspective really, I mean, a lot of the villains that he was put against were intellectuals and dangerous folks with mental abilities, and so that's really why, I mean, that was the kind of dynamic that was always kind of in play there. And I just think that this movie was good at that. When he first came on screen, John Lone reminded me so strongly of middle age, like 10-15 years ago, Johnny Depp. I had to like look and then look again, and I was like,
He had that sort of look.
he did, and I just like I was really confused. I just, but I looked him up, and it was this guy John Lone, and he amazed me. He really captured that strange otherworldly feel that Johnny Depp was good at playing, and he was good at playing this this kind of sinister character, and so that was fun. And the other thing that was interesting was the way Peter Boyle's character Mo, he was also of the mental telepathy set, in that he would have his taxi exactly where it was needed, exactly when it was needed in this huge city, anywhere from like way east in Queens all the way through to across the Washington Bridge in New Jersey, and especially in running around Midtown Manhattan, where you wouldn't assume that anybody would know where you were, but for sure the character of Mo always knew where you were. And it was like all about this prescience and knowing things. This
Well, that'd have been the shadow going in mental state. I need you here, Mo.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And then Tim Curry, of course, and Jonathan Winter. The other character actors who were fantastic: James Hong and Joseph Meyer and Pax Wright as Berger, and Ethan Phillips. Ethan Phillips is just he plays such a, I mean, he plays good characters in Star Trek, but he plays just, he plays really devious character in this one, and so that's fun. And I just think that you guys chose a good one here. It is a fun story. It is possible. I mean, because of the training and because of all that, it is possibly a superhero, like the superheroes.
Yeah.
But and the result for Khan was, something that was very much Arkham in scope, and so yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So back over to you, Lee. What's your opening thoughts, mate?
Well, it's been a while since I watched this movie. And we decided to let's do the Shadow. So sat down this week, rewatched it, and I concur with both what you said. It is a pretty good movie. I don't know why it failed at the box office.
I think it's like from what I gathered, a lot of it like I think it's just like at the time there wasn't enough. Like I feel like if there was more comics at the time, like there was still obviously
Yeah.
I said there was comics in the 80s, so a lot of people knew who the Shadow was. But when come the 90s, there wasn't anything comics and stuff, and I think it just wasn't like they did advertise it like the next big thing and stuff. And I don't know, like if it was just like maybe not advertised quite well or something. I know a lot of people complained about the well, critics anyway, complained about the script. And it's funny because I saw an interview with them, like an old interview, where they were praising the script.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, it's funny because the critics were having a go at the script. I think unfortunately there was a lot of problems like with the script because I think there was a lot more stuff they were going to do with the script. But as typical filming situations go, they sort of like, cut things out, took it out. And then, of course, I think we could have got more Shadow, but obviously they ended up focusing more on Lamont Cranston. So we only get the Shadow in a few bits and stuff like that.
I mean, you mostly hit the nail on the head though about promotion. We don't get it these days in modern movies that these film companies just do not promote they don't promote their babies. They put money into it and all like that, but they just do not do any promotional stuff. And the movies fail.
Yeah, I think if they promoted it correctly, like they did promote a lot of stuff. They were going quite mad, like saying like, "Oh, it's the next big superhero movie."
Yeah.
But I think they should have said before Superman, before Batman, this is where it began. And I think if there were comics at the time, you'd have had more of an audience. And I think if you said this is the first superhero ever, this is where it started, people might have gone, "Oh, let's check it out. Let's check it out in cinema." The first superhero.
What was it now? It was the budget was $40 million, and the box office take was 48 million.
Yeah,
so it only made 8 million.
Well, I remember a friend of mine. I was lucky enough to catch it, but I remember a friend of mine at the time, and he always says this that he'd seen Shadow being promoted in the comics. Like you go to a comic book shop and he would get a comic, reading, and then he would see a poster of the Shadow, and he thought, "Oh, that looks really cool. What's that? The Shadow." He would see that, and he went to his local cinema, but for some reason it wasn't on, and he was thinking, well, "Where is it?" Unless like maybe he missed it, or they just like had it on, and then they suddenly took it off randomly. But he vividly was like, "How did you get to see it?" Because it wasn't on at my local cinema.
Yeah.
So
I do like the way they've kept for the character of the Shadow the facial features.
Yeah.
The big beak nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's what he had in the books. He never had the face changing thing, but that was always his face in the comics.
Yeah.
But obviously, in this, they thought, well, Alec Baldwin looks like this. Let's make him morph his face with a beak nose and stuff.
So they can make him into a hero and be like an alter ego, like Bruce Wayne, Batman, Clark Kent, Superman. You change the facial features, but I do like the way they did, and the emphasis on the eyes.
Oh yeah.
As you say,
they went from bright blue to black. You're right.
Yeah, and it's quite funny because in some iterations, it's either blue or black, or one interesting one is red. Really, and in some of the comics were really good. Like some of the designs, particularly in the 80s, he was drawn in a very Wraith-like manner. Like you get the shadow of the hat, the red scarf, all black, and he's red eyes.
Hmm.
And that was a really good look.
Wow.
Wanted to beat them on a Dark Knight.
Huh.
But yeah, it's a good, for me, it's a good comic related hero movie. And as we've mentioned, the cast, in my opinion, though, I think some talent in this movie was wasted.
Yeah.
Ian McKellen was totally wasted in this movie. Jonathan Winters, I thought, was wasted in this movie. He only had 2 scenes.
Mm.
Those 2 actors, I mean, with the comedic side of Jonathan Winters, you could have done so much more with Uncle. What was his name? Uncle Bath. But and with Ian McKellen's Dr. Reinhardt, just having him there being subdued and hypnotized for most of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's how I said, like, I think there was more with the script.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as you know, as
And-
the acting industry goes, they end up doing rewrites, reshoots, like, or taking bits out and stuff. So I think when they did those interviews,
And then
I was gonna say, when they did those interviews saying praising the script, it must have been like before suddenly they go, "Oh, let's take that out, cut that character down, cut it out." And so I think that there, unfortunately, there's a lot of actors in this, like big actors, but some of them do get wasted or don't get enough
I
screen.
will say going like Tim Curry as Claymore. Another one. I think his time on screen was not well spent.
Yeah, I forgot how, because I always remember. I don't know if this was a Mandela effect, but I always thought he had more time on that film. I always remembered him. I remembered his character in it, and I thought he's got a lot of bits. But no, he's like you said, he's only got some small bits in it.
Yeah, and then I mean, I do like the his comeuppance and his when he confronts the shadow, but
I'll mention that later. Yeah,
I think his character could have been involved more.
Yeah,
but what are we? Who are we? We're not the movie makers, are we?
No, but we are the critics, so that's what we're here for.
No, please don't call us the critics.
All right. The reviewers.
I'm a nice person.
Yes.
So, right, we'll open the floor. Then, Susan, we'll go to you and we'll open the floor and we'll go see where it takes us.
Okay. The interesting thing is how this connects to the other one that we're doing. Is that Alec Baldwin is going through some hard stuff with a shot that has killed some people, and not from shooting this, but from shooting another one that still hasn't been released yet due to the issues going on with that.
Yeah.
But it does tie it to The Crow. And Ethan tied it to The Crow because of the nature of the hero figure. I think that those two, those two factoids or facts, that's those are really interesting. And I mean, in this, like the other one that we reviewed, Oppenheimer, this is dealing with the bomb. And it's a bomb that is, it's a proper like fusion fission. They were talking about how it's both. So it's more like a hydrogen bomb than a fission only device. It was just amazing, like that sort of devastation that they were planning. I mean, very Oppenheimer, very very high science. I like the other scene that was really intriguing was the round tank that looked like it could have been the bomb in Macro. Like the bomb was this little thing that was spherical, and then the shadow ends up in a tank, in a spherical tank, being the Claymore trying to drown him.
Well, yeah, that's where they kept the bomb, wasn't it? That's why he was there, and
Yeah,
he'd moved it.
yeah, yeah. And then the other scene was the reveal of the mentally uh deleted or mentally cloaked um hotel. That was really interesting too.
I mean, as he said, such power to
Uh,
conceal that in everybody, to fool everybody, to
mm,
not see that building.
mm.
I mean, now this is a question. I mean, in that building, the scene with Khan and the Shadow, where he makes the floor start to tilt.
Mm.
I was just wondering, is that the same apparatus what was used in Flash Gordon?
Do you know what? I thought the exact same thing. I'm expecting, the fight on there with Timothy Dalton.
Yeah, I was expecting spikes to come up from the floor, but
Yeah,
the way it was designed, it was like sort of exactly the same size. But I thought, nah, I mean, Flash Gordon was 1980. This was 94.
yeah.
They must have dismantled that by now.
It must have been a thing for the 1930s, like pulp comics and stuff, because Flash and all that's from that time. They must have
Yeah.
thought, oh, we use it in that film. Oh, we'll do the same in this film.
Yeah,
Wasn't that like one of those things that they used to have those games created out of wood that had a ball that you try to, you know,
oh
aim
yeah,
for
like
the hole?
move it like that. Yeah, up and down, get the ball moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Great to say, as if Ethan mentioned earlier, the soundtrack,
Oh.
it just
Oh,
suits the movie. Um, and I mentioned to Ethan before we started recording that the musical advisor on this was Jelly Bean, which when you listen to the outgoing track by Taylor Dane, you can see the influence. So he must have advised or co-written the song or whatever.
yeah.
But the musical score was by oh, what's his name again?
Jerry
Um,
Goldsmith.
Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah.
But great soundtrack. It's the feel of that era.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the things I love about it, and unfortunately, you don't get a lot of movies these days
No,
where it really fits that time. And for me, uh, one of my favorite, what I think one of my favorite moments,
Oh,
which
you mean Jelly Bean Benitez?
yeah, that's it.
Oh, sorry. Go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
One of my, I'll mention favorite moments later, but I think the whole 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes of that movie is the best introduction, probably one of the best introductions to a superhero ever. I mean, you've got him as a villain, then,
yeah,
doing the training. Well, you don't see the training, but at the start of it anyway. And then you see him on the bridge taking out the gangsters, and then straight to that nightclub with where the music kicks in, and the music for that 20 minutes, all the different tunes, and like that singer who sings some kind of mystery fits it absolutely perfectly. I mean, I feel like that song could have been such a hit and a jazz standard. But I
yeah.
suppose like the movie, it's sort of become a bit of a gem, like a hidden gem or something like that. But it fits it so good. That whole nightclub scene where he enters. Um, on a side note, I wonder if there's an alternate dimension where Alec Baldwin got to play Bruce Wayne and Tim Curry as Joker.
You never know.
Do you know what I mean? I still look when I look at him and I go, you know what? He could have been a really good Bruce Wayne. Actually, he really looks when he came in with a suit and everything. But yeah, the soundtrack to this film is fantastic. As you said, we've got the jazz music, the dark noir style music,
Yeah.
And the song "Some Kind of Mystery." Actually, and there's actually after. Funny enough, actually, I'll point out there's a little tune like the saxophone that's playing when Margot Lane enters and he goes to talk to her saying about Peking duck.
Yeah.
That I couldn't help but laugh actually, and smile because that's Kenny G.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah. Kenny
Yes,
G.
Kenny G. It's his tune "Remembrance," and I'm a big Kenny G fan, and it was his song "Remember." And I couldn't help but part of me was like, Kenny G didn't exist in the 1930s, but I love it because it's the 90s.
Kenny G with that frizzy hair.
Yeah. And as you said, a great song, great ending song by Taylor Dane, at the end. I still remember the music video to that actually on MTV.
I can't remember that.
Yeah.
I can't remember that, and I'm older than you. But I'll tell you something I do like, and I think this is a superhero trope, and this does it as well with the Shadow. He scares the bejesus out of the villains.
Oh yeah.
But his voice changes. He becomes this insane maniacal laugh
Yeah.
to scare the crap out of them.
Yeah. You never get that with any other hero. That's why I love the Shadow. He laughs at them.
Yeah, but Batman you sort of do because he's the creature of the night as well as is the Shadow.
Exactly.
They're the only two what seem to do that. Frighten the shit out of you.
Yeah, I mean, Batman frightens the shit out of them in the way he does. Very, I want you to tell your boys all about me. I'm Batman. Yeah, that's it. But
But
what I love about
change his voices though as well.
yeah, but what I love about it, like I said, the Shadow. Not only does he scare the absolute crap out of them, he's got an absolutely evil laugh that absolutely terrifies them, and you never see that. Like, he's one of those characters where you're like, if you didn't know who he was, you'd be like, is he the villain? Is he a
Yeah.
bad guy? That's why he's just this insane laugh, laughing at them, mocking them, and I think that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Any? Yeah. What was that? We should say something then. No.
It was just, you're right about the laughter. And the other thing that was fun is that the reason that is so effective is because he's not only in their face with the laughter, he's in their heads with his mind control. I mean, that's it's epistemological, it's knowledge, it's tautology, it's just all that stuff, all that ability to really know uh and to affect people in their heads.
Yeah.
And that's cool because like the people he's dealing with are also that way and really good at it. And so like, like the expert at manipulation, this movie is like we have these things going on. They're in plain sight, but you guys aren't going to be able to see anything. That's cool.
Yeah. It's a cool movie.
And that's like I have to say actually, speaking of like all the stuff, the effects some of the effects are like the miniature shots are great, and there's some effects which are obviously, a little bit dated, but the best effect they had was that psychotic little dagger. Stands up, and I think they used like a really high definition on it, which was the highest they'd ever seen in a movie. But yeah, I loved that. Going to what we were talking about there with the Shadow, how he is, the laughter. Again, it's so good, and that's one of the little gripes one of the little nagging problems I have with the film. Again, I love the film. I think it's brilliant. But one of the problems I did have was I wish we did have more shadow, because it does focus more on Lamont Cranston's side, and we only get the shadow like in certain scenes. Unlike, say, at the time, Michael Keaton's Batman in Batman and Batman Returns, we've got a really good balance of Bruce Wayne, Batman, Bruce Wayne, Batman. But in this, it does have a lot of Lamont Cranston. And I do wish we could have seen more of the shadow. I think they could have had so much fun with what he's capable of and what he can do, and like how he really just gets into their heads. I would have loved to have seen more of that and more of his fighting styles as well.
I know you mentioned the dagger Perber.
That was his name. That was his name. Yeah.
It was voiced by Frank
Welker. Yeah.
Which
he gets around, don't he, Frank Welker?
He does. I mean, from the '60s Scooby-Doo fame of Fred, all the way through his other animated voices. To get him to just do, I mean, to get him to voice that, well, just make noises.
Yeah, that's it. Just make noises.
Yeah, just they could have got anyone, but no, they got Frank Welker.
And it looks like they had a series of shadow movies in the 1940s, 1946. Yeah. There was like 8 of them then.
Was there like the serials?
Yeah, it was the serials, black and white serials they had.
Yeah. Like your Flash Gordons and
yeah.
Exactly. Oh, cool. That'd be nice. They'll most will be on YouTube or whatever.
Oh, they are. Yeah, I've watched them on YouTube. They're quite good, actually. Oh, cool. Quite interesting.
I know. I think most of the radio shadow is on YouTube as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Oh, I recommend this.
Old Time Radio Theatre or whatever it goes under. Yes. Anything else we would like to say about the shadow?
I have to say, one of the things I miss in a superhero movie, or like even like you know, a hero and villain.
Yeah.
The best bits for me is every scene between Lamont and Shiwan when they talk. Like how Shiwan Khan instantly knows where he is and is just there at his hideout. It's such a Moriarty meeting up with Sherlock way. And they just talk to each other, like they respect each other. I wish we could get this in other movies. We don't get this anymore. The only time we'll see it is like in a Sherlock versus Moriarty story. Yeah, Batman sometimes does it, but then again, he interrogates like Riddler or Penguin. Yeah.
But we said before we started recording that we don't get this type of superhero movie anymore.
No, but those scenes are just so good.
Well, as we've come up with, we've got to blame Marvel and Warner for sort of ruining the sort of superhero franchise.
Yeah.
By overkill.
Yeah, they've lost the style. They've lost the sense of style and art, which is like, and standing out as its own thing. Like I said, that year we had The Mask, which did its own thing, and it's got its own look. The Shadow had its own style and look. The Crow had its own style and look. There were tons of movies that stood out. Yeah. And each one was so unique. No matter what age rated it would be, you'll still go and see it because it looked bloody great and it was a great story.
Yeah.
But now today, Marvel's kind of just, it's gone overkill and become mainstream. That it's just the same bog standard thing again and again and again.
It's just the superhero producing machine.
Yeah, and they try to make it too realistic. They always say like, "Oh, we got to make it realistic." Even the Dark Knight trilogy had this bloody problem, and this is one of the big problem I have with that series of movies. Oh, we got to make it realistic. No, you don't. Just make it a comic book movie. Just make it, like The Shadow, a full-on comic book movie. It's a comic book movie for a reason.
It's a comic book.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to suddenly go, "Oh, let's imagine it's realistic." No, you don't. No, you don't. Just keep it a comic book.
Yeah. Yeah, as I say, we had this. We said we had this conversation before Susan joined the cast. Um, I'm totally in agreement with you. We've just been inundated with superhero movies, and people have just got bored of them now.
Yeah,
Occasionally, one or two come along, you think that's different. That's quite a good one, but
yeah.
it's just the same thing churned over and over again in this superhero movie making machine.
Well, they become very bland. The only
Yeah,
ones that I can mention that, as I've mentioned before, the cast, uh, the only ones I'm looking forward to and I really like today are the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, the Batman with Robert Pattinson, which I thought was phenomenal, and I'm looking forward to the second part, and the Penguin, because they do things where it's like it has its, it's got these looks that we've seen before. The Joker, Taxi Driver, the Batman, a bit of like Tim Burton meets The Crow,
yeah,
but it's great but they still stand out as unique because it's different. It's a comic book world.
yeah.
But the
That's it as well.
Marvel's just the same bland thing again and again. I'm like,
And the fan this out now because the movies are failing.
yeah,
So let's
I would,
bring back
I,
let's
I
bring
would,
back superhero movies like they used to be.
yeah,
Well,
I
I
would love.
really like to argue this point. I do like their Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Deadpool because
yeah, actually,
it is
point, yeah,
proper sass,
yes,
yeah,
and
very good point, actually.
and those,
Deadpool meeting, Donna Noble would be hilarious. And then there's another thing that like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, it is very comic book like
Yeah, I agree,
from the outer
absolutely.
space comic book
yeah,
styling.
you've got
Well,
that's the point there. Those two ones you've mentioned are more comic book than
yeah,
Uh-huh.
the
exactly.
other.
Then the rest of the bunch. Yeah, well done,
Right.
Susan. Thank you for pointing those out. Actually, Guardians of the
I
Galaxy,
do
I
really
love.
like Deadpool. I can't wait for Deadpool 3.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, brilliant. A very sci-fi 80s styled
Very
comic book
cool.
movie. Brilliant. Deadpool, an absolutely bonkers comic book movie. So yeah, we still have that they're one of those ones that are just so good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
At least like you said, more comic booky
Uh-huh.
than a lot of the Marvel stuff.
Uh-huh.
but who are we? We're just reviewers.
Yeah.
We haven't got the money to put into these films. So, anything else before we go to final say and score? No.
No,
All
I
right
think
then. Who wants to go first?
okay.
Ethan, of course.
All right then.
Final say and score. What's your final say?
um, I'm actually going to give The Shadow um 8.5 stars, 8.5, 10 stars. I would love to give this film a full 10 stars. I do love this film. I love it. But I know there's things I think it could have improved on. Like I said, some of the script, I would have loved to read the original script
Yeah,
that they wanted to do. And there are some things which I think they could have improved on, like the final fight. I think they could have done more with. I would have loved to see more of the Shadow and Shiwan Khan fight it out in the mirrors,
yeah,
like Enter the Dragon. They could have had real fun with that. Like Enter the Dragon style, a lot more of that. Because that was a thing. There was going to be more of the final fight, but when they were filming it, there was an earthquake that destroyed the mirrors. So I think, unfortunately, time restraints made them go, "Oh, we just got to film it. We just got to film it." So that's why it just seems a very quick, lackluster showdown. Uh, I would have loved to see more of that, but there's so much I think they could have improved on. But I do still love the film, so that's why I give it an 8.5 stars,
eight and a
because I
half.
do.
Not bad.
I
Not a
would
bad
love to
score.
see more of the Shadow. I would love to see more of the Shadow. Give us a. We've seen Batman many times. I'm
Yeah.
happy to see the Batman, Robert Pattinson. We've seen Spider-Man. We've seen him, but give us something different. Give us the Shadow. Give us the Phantom. Give us Rocketeer. I would love to see something like this come back.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed because you never know. Times and tides will change, and
Yeah.
hopefully,
8.5 stars, 8.5 out of 10 stars to, do you know what? A great 90s comic book movie. And one I recommend keeping in your collection or adding to your collection. You want a fun comic book movie? That's the one.
right. That's Ethan. Let's go to Susan. Oh,
Be it for me to agree with Ethan, but I will agree. 8.5 mental telepathy waves out of 10. I think that I like the mind game. This movie had it didn't go into that Inception or Tenet where they're trying to mess with reality, except for just mind control and really you know trying to have meetings of the minds, and they do show that the that Shiwan Khan and Lamont Cranston are expert mentalists and expert, you know, conversationalists in their heads. And I think that that's just really fun, and it's always good to see Tim Curry and Ian McKellen, of course. So Penelope and Miller, so that was fun. Okay, so yeah. And Alec Baldwin, I don't think he was responsible for the bullet in the gun in the movie Rust. I just have to put that out there. I don't think it was his responsibility, it was the armorer's responsibility. And that's just my opinion. I'm not the jury or the lawyer or the judge, but that's me. Anyway.
I think the problem with that thing there, Susan, is if he wasn't the producer of the movie, he'd be fine. But seeing as he's the producer of the movie, everything falls on his shoulders.
Yeah.
So, it all comes back to him. But fingers crossed, people will see, that it was just an accident. It was just one of those things. For me, great movie, The Shadow, fun movie. There's a few things what need to be explained, like at the beginning where he's the drug baron. It's not really explained well. And also for me, some of the actors are wasted in this movie, as I've already mentioned. McKellen, Winters, even what's his name? I forgot his name now.
Who did he play?
Shiwan Khan?
No. Oh, Tim Curry. How can I forget Tim Curry? Because when he's on screen, he just eats the scenery.
Yeah.
So he should have been there more. But just because of those little things, I'm going to give this 8.5 demonic daggers out of 10.
That was a good scene.
But strangely, three of us here, 8.5 each.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away that it's a fun movie. And I agree totally with what Ethan said. Let's have another Shadow, even if it's not Alec Baldwin, someone else who can take this character forward
And give it like a real unique look.
Yeah.
You know, so like Sin City going black and white, or what was that movie years ago? Captain of the Sky or
Oh, the Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
yeah, and that had a very sort of
Yeah.
monochrome look. You know,
Yeah.
give it some kind of look. Give it something that makes it stand out, make you go, ooh.
But
Ooh.
the movie makers need to get out of this complicit rut they're in. I said, "Oh, we'll just make another one like that. We'll just make another one like that." No, there's no originality in it. We'll just make another one like that. Regurgitate that story and put it over there. You know, that's all they're doing just lately. But as we say, we're not the movie makers. We're just the people what refuse to go and watch them at the cinema.
That's it. That's it, really.
Not another one. Oh, I can't be bothered to go.
Do you want to see this? Oh, I've seen it before. Bye.
It's all been done before. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is our little review of The Shadow. You guys out there, if you've seen it, let us know what you thought of the movie. Leave a comment below. You'll find this video on all forms of platform of the social media, be it Facebook, X, not Twitter anymore, X. We're on Instagram and all like that, YouTube. So you can leave comments on any of those because I put the link all over the social media so you can watch this video. Please give us a like on the video or any of our back catalogue of videos. We've got quite a few. And if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, please press the bell notification button and you'll get notified every time we put up a video. And if you'd like to join Susan, Ethan, or myself, please message us again. Leave a message. All you have to be is 18 and over, because some things what we review is 18 rated, of course.
Oh my!
And yeah, sometimes our discussion can get a bit heated with certain words. So 18 plus. Please have a working camera and microphone on the device you use, and you're in. I say it's good to see Ethan back after a sabbatical. He's come back for just to annoy us. See what I mean? See what I mean? The guy's insane. But yeah, so until next time, guys, remember, always beware of the shadow.
The shadow knows.